Hello everyone, here we are again. We're now on week 3 and I thought it would be a good idea to look a little bit at perspective now because we've been doing some landscapes, so thought it would be a good idea to start including some buildings. But we're not going to get particularly heavy with the perspective, I hope. So just looking at it a little bit and giving you some notes when I attach the rest of the stuff, so that you can then, have a read and try not to get too bogged down by it all. The idea of perspective can be very restricting, so just try to follow the basic rules and eventually the rest will follow, because in my opinion, getting too involved with trying to get the perspective absolutely accurate can become very worrisome and will take away your natural spontaneity, so which to me is more important. So I prefer to see a less accurate painting than one that has been laboured over and has lost its freedom. This is why painting an old building can work better for us, as they tend to not look so perfect and can show much more character. So maybe if you're a beginner, try to find something similar to that to paint. Having said that, I know there will be some of you who want to maintain complete accuracy, and I will attach a photograph showing how this can be done. But I'm hoping you'll all find something that you would like to portray in your landscapes that will create some perspective in your work. And today I've chosen a boathouse. I know I took the photograph at Walberswick in Suffolk. So I've done my drawing. I didn't use a ruler. I just did it by eye, and so perhaps it's not 100% accurate, but it's good enough for me. And as it's a wooden building, it isn't going to be maybe totally perfect and might have a little bit of character attached to it. I've used a little bit of drawing gum, but not very much, just for the wires that are hanging down and a few of the grasses. But I'm going to use a flat brush to create the planks in the woodwork. So the colours I've got out today are sepia, Payne's grey, ultramarine blue, burnt sienna, neutral tint, a green with raw sienna added, and the cadmium and Payne's grey mix that we always use for darker colours. And as I said, a little bit of masking fluid. And using a nice flat brush will help to get the sort of marks that I'm looking for. So there's a corrugated iron roof. So first of all, I'm going to put down some burnt sienna, because I just feel that might create a few rusty marks. And I'm trying not to make my picture particularly stiff. I want to keep nice and free and create some spontaneity at the same time. I've popped a little bit of, because it's going to be a vignette, not gone right to the edges of my picture, my pad. I want to keep the edges free so it's a little vignette. So I'll allow that to dry a little bit, and then I'll go back in with some deeper colours. But I've got some neutral tint here which will actually create quite the right sort of colour, I think. Using this brush on the flat like this is going to help me to leave some white paper as well. So I'm dropping a little bit of that burnt sienna on the top of that as well, just to create a little bit more warmth in there. And I'm letting it run a little bit as well. So don't be fussy with it. Right, as you can see, the perspective is in. So far as I've got my eye line is about here, halfway, just below halfway down my building. So anything above my eye line there is going down towards the distance. That includes the planks. But as you come to your eye line, it's actually going to be a little bit straighter. And then as you go beneath your eye line, everything will start going up towards the distance. This is a 2-point perspective, so it's going to go up that way and it's going to go up that way, down and up, and there's the eye line. Okay, so that's the basic perspective. So I would suggest that you just try to remember that for the moment and just go with it as best as you can. But please don't labour over it. So I'm trying to keep that going all the way through. You can always go back in and drop little bits of other colour while it's still damp. It's going to create more interest. I'm going to try to keep working quite wet so that it all runs around a little bit and becomes less rigid. Because working on completely dry paint is going to give me a harder edge. So that's the base there. I'll go back maybe in a bit and put some more work into that. A few more darker colours perhaps. Right, so got to be careful not to go over the door too much. But I'm going to work plank by plank. And I've only given myself a very soft drawing with a very soft pencil. There's something pinned to the wall there, so I thought that just added a bit of interest perhaps. So it's levelling up now because I'm coming down towards my eye line. And then it will start going up towards the distance. It's very weathered, so in fact if you if you are actually painting something that's wooden, you could always use the masking, or in fact candle wax always works well on weathered wood. We've done that before, haven't we, with fence posts and things. So I'm actually just dropping a little bit of water back on because I want to mix it up a little bit. Trying not to allow it to get too harsh. Right, I'll leave the door and do that in a minute because there's the picture. The door is a completely different colour. It's more like the rooftop. Working right over the top of my masking there because I don't want to distort the shape that I made with the masking fluid. Right, I'll just stop and finish these planks and then come back. Back again, so I've finished some of the planking and now I just want to go back into the rooftop. So I'm just using my flat brush on its edge and just creating some sort of dark areas between the ridges in that lovely tin roof, corrugated iron. So I'm just indicating what I see without trying to get too detailed and involved. Nice and dark under eaves always. Okay, so that's taken shape a little bit better. So there's a rusty old pole here with some kind of a pulley on it, but again the flat brush should deal with that quite well. Give it a bit of a darker side as well. So do get hold of a flat brush if you haven't got one, because painting landscapes, they're always such a helpful addition to your brush collection. Okay, so there's a rusty top to this little storage place that's sitting on the outside here. Putting a little bit of ultramarine blue in with my burnt sienna, so that I don't have to touch it too much. I'm getting some darks in there at the same time, and leave. See what it dries up like. At this point there's no need to touch it too much at all. So a very important part of this painting, to help to tell the story is this little life belt. So I'm going to get that in. Just got some shadow, a little bit of something going on in the white area. Now that helps to tell us what this little boat house is and what it's used for. There's grass growing all up around this area here, so I'm just sort of leaving little bits of space to pop that in at the end. So that's beneath my eye line. So these little planks in this thing should be going up that way. Depth under here. A little bit more colour into that. And actually I think the darker we go behind this life belt, the better it's going to look, because it's going to show up the life belt a bit better. But that's all it really needs at the moment. So let's go back to the door. Trying not to put my arm on what I've already done. So it's quite an old looking door, which is good. It's very good practice for perspective to find something that has planking, because that helps to make the eye look nice and carefully at the perspective, but at the same time using a brush like this, and you won't get too bogged down by, you know, making it too perfect looking. But it helps you to see which way everything goes. So I'm going to break that door up a little bit by putting some depth underneath there and under here. You can go back and you can put depth between all of the planks if you wish. But my pencil's still there, so that's showing a little bit of that anyway, so I'm not actually going to do that on this particular picture. Right, so I've got some steps to deal with here. And it's all getting a little bit warmer, so in colour, so I'm bringing a bit more brown in. It actually does get very dark under here, but I don't want to, I want some grass as well, so I'm having to be careful about leaving some little areas to pop my grass in afterwards. But always putting little dark areas into your pictures is going to help to give lovely contrast. That's quite light, the top of that step. I think I will just actually put a little bit more work into that door. As things dry, you'll see for yourself what you maybe would like to do. Rusty hinges. Right, finish off these steps. Using one big brush will always help to loosen you up. You get a small brush out, you'll start fiddling way too much straight away. So depending on the sort of painting you want to end up with, think about the brushes that you use and what's going to be helpful to you. It does actually get really dark under here, so I'll try to get that in, but then I'm going to ease up towards the bottom here where the grass hopefully will show through. That's a lovely little area there to get really dark, and in here which will show the light up so much more. Right, okay. I'm just going to stop again for a minute. Right, back again. I just mixed up a little bit of greens, some of the greens for my grasses, but I just want to put a couple of posts in. I've painted in some old boys, not old boys, but old boys down here. They've just been left in the grass. Right, so let's try some greenery. I'm adding some raw sienna to my greenery because it's sort of quite yellowy over there. And I've got my nice foliage brush out to try and vary these greens a little bit. So darker at the side there, a bit blue will give you some distance and keep the eye coming back into the page as well. But I'm not going to be fussy with it, I'm just going to quickly pop some of this greenery in. I'm running out of time as usual. And mustn't forget that I'm creating a vignette here as well. So dropping some little touches of water back onto my foliage is going to create some texture in it and make it look a little bit more natural. Okay. It's all growing up around this area here. And don't be afraid to leave white, little bits of light coming in here on your foliage. I'm twisting and turning it around to get different shapes. People do have a bit of trouble with foliage, but I don't know, I think the less fuss you make about it, the better it is, really. Okay, that's a bit hurried, but I think you get the idea. Let's have some nice dark bits actually popping up around this area here where these buoys are. It's a bit of a pathway, so I'm trying to indicate that. So you can keep this going for as long as you like, really. There's lots of grasses and trying to make them look as natural as possible. There's some sort of plant here that's growing up. So anything like that to relieve the monotony is going to help. This is a very good brush for just putting in little shapes and bits of foreground and grasses and dry brushwork. It really stops you fiddling. Definitely something growing up here. So obviously keep an eye on your subject all the time, but you don't have to follow it exactly as you see it. Better not to. This is why if you labour over your perspective too much, you're going to lose that lovely spontaneity that comes naturally, and you'll end up with a very laboured, stiff painting that's not got too much character left. So be careful about that. Right, I'm going to leave it at that because I think when it's dry it's going to look okay. Just sort of need a bit of depth at the edge of this pathway, like that. Okay, so I could fiddle about, I could put more depth here and there, I could do lots of different things, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to leave it at that because I think you understand what I'm trying to say today. But I will just stop for a minute so that I can take that masking off. There's that wheel there I'd forgotten to do something about. There we are. It's not quite dry yet, but it was dry enough to get the masking off, and you can just see where that rope that's attached to that pulley is hanging down there. It just adds a bit of interest and gives a little bit of perspective, actually. Don't know what it's pulling, but there we are. Nothing very much, I don't think. But that's that finished, so hopefully you'll find something like that you can paint this week. I also painted it as a snow scene, so you could always, you know, give yourself another challenge by painting a similar thing and using your imagination and putting it in a snow scene. So that's that one. I also painted a barn a while back, or an old farmhouse with a barn attached, using warmer colours, which is again something else you can do and try with the foliage around and maybe some hills behind that we've worked on before. But if you want to get really involved with perspective, Willie Lock's cottage has got a lot of it. And I will attach this, which shows you how to get really involved with the perspective if you wish, and that's how to go about it. But to begin with, I would just say, if you make sure that your verticals are straight, that's going to help you a lot. So I would say just remember that anything above your eye line is going to go down towards the distance, and anything beneath your eye line is going to go up away from you towards the distance, eventually creating a vanishing point. But if you ensure that your verticals are completely up straight and not at an angle, It's going to help you to get everything right in the end, and you don't have to get as involved as this. Okay, so that's that for this week. I look forward to seeing what you do, as always, and I'm sure you'll find a nice building to paint. Or if the weather is nice, go outside maybe and paint your house or your garden, part of your garden as well, and maybe even your shed, which is a really nice thing to do, because that way you'll be working from life and you'll see everything firsthand. And next week I'll be painting again with perspective, perhaps more than one building. We'll see. But have a good week, everyone. Bye-bye.